Good afternoon, Britain. 37 minutes after 1 o'clock now. Parliament is facing a restoration bill running into tens of billions, with critics warning that the project is bloated, badly managed and driven by consultants, not common sense.
Well, with the costs spiralling and timelines stretching decades, some are now calling for a royal intervention to halt the scheme they say that this country simply cannot afford.
Well, joining us to discuss this is the founder and chairman of Create Streets, Nicholas Boys-Smith. Now, look, this sounds absolutely astronomical, a cost of in billions for a building that actually you could probably do for a lot cheaper. Why is it so expensive? What's the problem?
Well, how long have you got? Yes, so look, their own figures for the cost saving available, which they put at £45 million a year, which is a net present value of about 1.3 billion. So that's what they say we'll save in monetary terms. Against that, they've got a cost between 11 to 39 billion. So even if you say there are other reasons we should do this over and above saving money, and I think there are, clearly there's just an order of magnitude error here.
So this is £37 billion?
It's 11 to 39. It's
39,
it's a ludicrous
that could be spent on one building.
There are 5 key things, I think, that have gone wrong. But the first, and in a way the most profound, is just outrageous scope creep. So this is, I mean, you talk about sort of pork barrel politics. The whole farmers of pigs have been sort of pushed into this programme. And the key thing is, that's not just me saying that, and I should say, and we were talking about this before, but this was meant to be a sort of quick 2-hour article that I sort of wrote over the weekend, and it turned into the whole weekend reading the thing as I got just more and more appalled. The programme itself admits in terms that they've gone for nearly the most ambitious option. So they say the appeal of this scope level, level 4, they had 5 possible levels, and they went for the next but one most important. The appeal of this scope level was the potential to add additional improvements to the scope after costed proposals have been approved, should circumstances or the House's priorities change. They actually want to do even more than they are than they're going for. So they're trying to make a 19th century building operate like a 21st century building, to stop using a heating system that is quite inefficient, to use one that's much more efficient. That will cost at least £2 billion, probably more like £3 billion when you take across the management costs. Now, for that money, you could build many, many tens of miles, probably about 60 or 70 miles of trams in northern England. That would not just be massively beneficial in terms of carbon, the same terms it's justified in, it would also lead to economic growth. So it's a total failure of trade-offs and optimisation. There are deep, deep problems with this programme.
To make Parliament net zero, it would cost £3 billion. I mean, that's more money than the winter fuel cuts was going to save.
And for that money, we could be building the trams in Leeds and Huddersfield and heaven knows where else. So it's a very, very foolish trade-off.
So the whole point of it costing so much is because they want it to be a net zero building. Is that's one of the problems. So another problem is there are surprisingly few, I mean, for a long report, there are surprisingly few actual numerical targets in there. One of them, which I was initially sympathetic to, and at one level I am sympathetic to, was to increase the proportion of the building that's accessible step-free from 12% to 60% or 90% in sort of high-use areas. Now, actually, I think that's defensible in the sense that we have a different approach to these things than in the 1830s when this building was designed. And we would expect a level of public access. So I think that's actually fair at one level. However, if you look at other parliamentary papers, which I did over the weekend, you find that they assert, and they have maps on this, that nearly all of the public areas, the main areas in the Houses of Parliament are already step-free, are already accessible.
So this is spending billions of pounds to shorten the routes to take if you're in a wheelchair, rather than... It's not that these places aren't accessible, it's that they want to make it slightly more accessible.
They're also, and this I think is the sort of conceptual flaw, they're treating it, for that 12% figure, they're essentially counting as the same, the back of the most obscure corridor at the back end of the whole building on, floor 5 as the House of Commons. And they're treating that as the same and therefore justifying, again, more and more hundreds of millions of pounds.
So the long and short of this is that the government's trying to sell this as, unless we do this, Parliament will burn down.
Not true.
And instead, what they're doing is they're adding in net zero costs, smashing up ancient 1,000-year-old steps to put in ramps for wheelchairs, doing all sorts of extra stuff that they needn't do.
They do not need to do. It's very hard to be clear from the numbers. I went through them over the weekend. I would estimate that of the cost, and I say very high management cost as well, between 30 and 41%, much higher than is normal, I would estimate that about a third of them are genuinely necessary, about a third definitely aren't, and the rest I'm not so sure.
All right.
Nicholas Boy-Smith, thank you very much. He's the chairman of Create